What's going on, everybody? Teach back again with another video, and today we're talking about my updated 2023 NFL tight end rankings. I'm excited to bring this video to you because I actually didn't end up doing a tight ends video back when I did my way too early position rankings. I just didn't have a great feel for the class. Weren't a whole lot of names. I just didn't feel like I could give you a great list of 10. Now I'm feeling more confident. I actually have 11 names that came to mind. One name that we'll talk about that was just left off the list, but nonetheless, if you're new to this series, I'm going to go 5 all the way up to 1 and then also give you 5 today, actually 6 honorable mentions in the tight end position group. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. How do you think this tight end class in the 2023 group, how do you think they should rank? Like, who's your number 1, who's 2, who's 3, who's 4, who's 5, and who do you think the sleeper maybe of this draft class at the tight end position is? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like if you enjoyed today's video, and subscribe if you are in need of more NFL draft content, because I got you. I got you with plenty more football content coming your way. Well, let's go ahead and start 5 up to 1. Sam Laporta, I know you can't really see it well. The Iowa yellow is tough, but you know, it is what it is. Sam Laporta out of Iowa, really solid athlete, can move well with the football in his hands, good size too. He is not like Iowa tight ends of the past, like a George Kittle or even a TJ Hawkinson. Much more in the line of like a Noah Fant, who's just a good athlete and can move well in space. I think a little bit better of a route runner than Noah Fant. A lot of Noah Fant routes at the NFL level have become crossers and drags, kind of shaped like that versus hard cuts. I think Laporta does have enough route running ability to do some more than Fant, but do not think of him as like the next high-end blocking tight end from Iowa, because he is just not that. He is, and this is a good tight end class, but Sam Laporta on day 2, like, someone's gonna be happy to get him in the 3rd round because they're gonna get a plug-and-play solid tight end. I can play inline, maybe even kick him outside of the slot and try to create some mismatches there. He's just a solid, dependable, ready to go NFL caliber tight end. Then we get to Dalton Kincaid at 4, and I will talk about him and Luke Musgrave kind of partnered up together because I like a lot of what they both bring to the table. They just kind of different skill sets. I think Musgrave's a little bit better of a route runner than Kincaid. I think their athletic ability is going to be relatively similar, maybe a bump there for Musgrave. Kincaid, I think, better after the catch, and he is just kind of a bulldozer, and we'll kind of talk about that with a kind of a poor man's version of that, with the 2 honorable mentions specifically on the honorable mentions section of this. But Kincaid, again, a tank to bring down, and it was a huge part of that Utah offense. My hesitation, and the reason that ultimately I had him at 4 versus 3, you're drafting tight ends for their pass catching ability, with the maybe exception of who I have at 2 with Darnell Washington. But Kincaid at 6'3", like 235, 240. I don't feel as good about him as an inline blocker versus like Luke Musgrave, who's like 6'6", 250-ish. So I feel that Musgrave is a better blocker and has the frame to be a better blocker versus Kincaid. That being said, Luke Musgrave is not like George Kittle. Like, again, there is only one tight end in this class that is an absolute stud of a blocker, and there's some other guys who are okay, solid, competent blockers. And I think Musgrave has the potential to be okay, solid, gets the job done type of blocker. But 6'6", 250, I think he's going to test really, really well. Looks good at the Senior Bowl, which was big considering he had that huge injury after like week 2 this year at Oregon State. The 2 games he did get to play in, he looked really good. You saw the athletic ability, and you saw him be able to break out of routes, soft hands. I think you can do a lot of different stuff. I think this guy has a pretty expansive route tree at the tight end spot, so that certainly goes a long way as well. So I gave Musgrave the bump just ever so slightly over Kincaid, partially because of their frame, their blocking ability, but I also think he's going to be a little bit better of a tight end, or excuse me, a little bit better of an athlete. So I think that is worth prioritizing here at the tight end position. Then we get to Darnell Washington at 2. I mean, it's tough because he's probably not as good of a receiver as Luke Musgrave or even a Dalton Kincaid, but he's 6'7", 260, and he moves well for that size. So I think there's enough to build upon there. And, he had a little bit more receiving production, but he was also bogged down by the fact that Brock Bowers is tied at 1 in 2024. And I mean, did you watch the national championship game? Like, the man was going crazy on TCU, and he was doing that all year long, really. So I feel part of the reason we didn't get to see him as a tight end, as a receiving tight end more, was because of Brock Bowers. But honestly, because of how good of a blocker this dude is, he has pass blocking wins against B.J. Ojulari, who to me is a fringe round 1, round 2 type of guy, and Gervon Dexter, who is this really interesting prospect that I think is a solid day 2 pick, and he's a solid consideration on day 2. He's got pass blocking wins against that. How many tight ends can you say that about with 2 guys that I think should go in the top 100? That's crazy. And then on top of that, that frame and athletic ability to be able to move at 6'7", 260. There's a lot to be excited about here. And he doesn't have the most expansive route tree, or at least not that we saw him run at Georgia. So it's a little troubling there. But nonetheless, I think Like I've had him go to Cincinnati in mocks. I've had him go to Green Bay in other mocks where it's like if you put him in a situation where he doesn't have to be Superman, he doesn't have to be the go-to receiving option. And instead, you're really utilizing his pass blocking and run blocking on top of that and what he could do as a blocker. And then featuring in what he can do as a receiver and also just someone who's that big and moves that well for that size, there's something to be done. So like creative OCs, have your fun with Darnell Washington because I think there's a lot of fun to be had. Minimum, I think you're looking at an awesome blocker. So for a team like Cincinnati, you're getting a 6 offensive lineman out there. A team like Green Bay, who, David Bakhtiari, what's his future like? Or if you just want to get insane, like what if he ends up going to Detroit in the second round? I know a lot of Lions fans don't want tight end, but hear me out. Like him on top of that offensive line is not fair. That you'd have those 6 together as the most unbelievable offensive line I think I've seen in my life. So I'm here for that fit too. So, but I think utilizing him as a blocker, and then honestly, if he was just your check down guy, I'd be fine with that. Because again, 6'7", 260 is no easy task to bring down. So he could, at the worst, be a high-end blocker and your check down guy who gets stuff done after the catch. Because again, 6'7", 260, bring him down, and he moves well. So I think there's a pretty safe floor for Washington at the next level, but also some untapped upside because who knows? Maybe in a bigger receiving role, we just didn't get to see it at Georgia. So there is still something to learn from and maybe some room, some ceiling for him to grow into. And then Michael Mayer is my tight end 1. Has been throughout this entire process. Not nearly the athlete that a Luke Musgrave is, not nearly the blocker that a Darnell Washington is, but to me, the best route runner in this class, also the softest hands, I think the most secure pass catcher of this group, highest football IQ, in my opinion, too, has a great ability to be able to sink into the soft spots of zones, so just does those little things right, which you have to do if you're not going to be a high-end athlete when it comes to those testing numbers, and he's not, but he does everything else right. So, yeah, pretty safe pick here for number 1 tight end. Also great frame, high production too. And Notre Dame got kind of interesting, and Tommy Rees gave him a ton of credit. There's a reason that Nick Saban's poaching him off the Notre Dame coaching staff to make him his OC after O'Brien leaves. But he used Michael Mayer in a lot of interesting ways. Like he'd play in line, he'd use him in the slot, he'd line him up out wide and do some cool stuff with them. So I think he also comes with some alignment versatility, which again, get him in an offense with a creative OC. There's a lot of fun to be had with Michael Mayer and what mismatches you can create there. So I think some of that, plus his football IQ and his acumen in general, kind of makes up for some of the weaknesses and athletic limitations that he comes with. So let's talk about some of the honorable mentions now. Tucker Kraft is my tight end 6 here, South Dakota State. My problem is like the picture kind of encapsulates it. He just looks like a dude who's playing against guys who are not NFL caliber. Like he just looks like he's outrunning guys that he won't be playing against on Sundays. He looks like he's pushing and stiff arming and out bodying and out muscling guys who it's not fair competition. So does the tape look great? Yes. Oh my God. It looks like you're playing on rookie mode on Madden. That's insane. But I wonder how much that is the level of competition. So an intriguing end of day 3 guy to me, end of round 3 guy to me, beginning of day 3 type of pick where like you got him in the 3rd or the 4th, I am listening. Like Tucker Kraft fair, all right, I think it's worth taking the shot. Because who knows, maybe he does translate to the next level and no, he makes everybody look like that. You know what I'm saying? Totally plausible. But I do think there's an inherent risk at the fact that he was playing against much lower competition and maybe he's just meh when it comes to, once he's out there on Sundays and playing against NFL competition. So let me get Davis Allen. I think a really fun player and a guy who looked good at the Senior Bowl. And I know a lot of people like this is their sleeper tight end, and I get it. A dude that big with that type of physicality can go up and get it. That's intriguing. So really like him for contested catch spots. It comes down to what type of tight end you're looking for in your offense too. Like him versus Cameron Latu is the next guy we're going to talk about. Different role. And then Zach Kuntz after that, different role. And then Will Mallory, even more of that. Very different role. But nonetheless, Davis Allen is like that contested catch, high point guy. I'm interested. I think he could fill that role at the NFL level, and he looked really good at the Senior Bowl. And then Cameron Latu, also a guy who looked at the Senior Bowl, was actually voted Offensive Player of the Week for practice. And they actually did a cool thing at Mobile where the position groups you were competing against, they voted on who got the Player of the Week award. So that came from linebackers and safeties, the guys that he was going one-on-one with. But solid athlete, solid size, not the greatest route runner by any means. Also not a role that was fully utilized at Alabama. Competent blocker, nothing crazy, but solid, can get the job done. Him and then Cade Stover is the guy I don't have on this list. I think their strengths are, it's get the ball to them and they are absolute bulldozer. If you're looking to run those little tight end screens to the line of scrimmage and let a guy pick up anywhere from 8 to 12 yards just off his strength alone, Cameron Letu and Cade Stover, your guys, also pretty solid blockers compared to some others in this class, especially compared to like a Will Mallory, who was the last guy we'll talk about. So Letu was an interesting name, and because of the late buzz and some of the hype from the Senior Bowl and what I got to see, I decided to give him the bump over Cade Stover. But they're kind of filling each other's spot here as kind of the tank tight end. That if that's what you're looking for, the tight end spot, I think they're solid ads, especially, you know, end of day 2, certainly end of day 2, like very end of day 2, like once you get to 90s, I can consider those guys. And it also comes down to what other tight ends are off the board. But if my top 6 are off the board and your preference is Letu over Allen, I get it. If we're in the 90s or on day 3, I'm fine with that pick. Then we get to Zach Kuntz, and yeah, a really interesting player and a guy that Jim Nagy was selling, trying to sell everybody on, and I mean, not for any bad reasons. Like, I'm intrigued. He was the guy who kind of turned me on to Zach Kuntz, and looked good at the Senior Bowl. Really good athlete. I think there's work to be had as a receiver and even as a blocker. And I think he could stand to gain probably about 10 pounds. So some work to be done. But the way this guy moves and just a really solid pass catcher, like in regard to his hands. Really nice hands. So he kind of one of those tight ends where it's like, I don't think he'll run hard cut. Like, this dude running an out route is not going to be pristine. Like, it's not going to be pretty. But if you get him on a crosser or a drag, or he's just running general kind of looping routes, because he's a good athlete, he'll outrun linebackers. And he's big enough to kind of work off and fend off safety. So he is definitely a guy that, you know, like if you're Green Bay, let this guy run the seams and let him run, you know, crossers. Kind of the same stuff you're doing with Robert Tonyan. That's what you need. Seattle could use someone like this too, and kind of do the same stuff they were doing with Noah Fant last year. I could totally see this being a guy that they fall in love with, maybe a day 3 type of guy. I definitely think Kuntz is going to end up being a day 3 guy, but man, that type of athlete is really interesting. And again, add 10 pounds of weight, maybe he does come along as a blocker. And then maybe with some NFL coaching, his route running does sure up. But I think this is a guy where it's just like, hey, I don't need my tight end to do a lot. Just basically be more athletic than the guy from across from you. And I think Zach Kuntz can do that. And then we get to Will Mallory. He kind of suffers from the Brevin Jordan struggles, where it's like, this guy is not a tight end. He is a tight end in position name only. This guy's a slot receiver. And it's the same kind of weakness that where it's kind of made a hard role. Like, where do you play Brevin Jordan? That's why, you know, like Houston hasn't really utilized him a whole lot. And it's just been hard for him to find a full-time role, because, like, I need you to block if you're going to be a tight end, or I need you to be faster and more athletic and be able to run more routes if you're a slot wide receiver. And he's neither. So he's kind of this awkward tweener, but, you know, solid athlete, good pass catching, actually a pretty decent route runner. Like, a lot of things that you look at on tape and it's like, yeah, there might be something here. I just worry, man. Like, he could be your big slot, but that's a specialist role. So, like, day 3 only type of guy to me, and you're specifically looking for that big power slot, or you think maybe, just maybe, you could teach him how to play inline tight end, but I don't see that in the card. So again, he kind of suffers from that same Brevin Jordan weakness that he had a couple years ago. But that is going to do it for my updated 2023 NFL tight end rankings. Let me know how you rank this class 5 up to 1, and then who are some of your favorite honorable mentions? Maybe who's your favorite sleeper of this group? Love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to talk about this upcoming NFL draft with you down below in the comment section. Like if you enjoyed today's video, subscribe if you're new, but that is going to do it for me. Until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.